All right, well, we got a lot to go over today. I'm gonna try not to get too into the like super details of all the reports, like everything about the reports, and kind of just talk about high level stuff because there's a lot to cover. And I know some of you guys are focused on one genre, but I'm going to try to go over all three of the genres. Do you see my screen now? Sorry, Corinne, you said that you don't.
Yes, we do see your screen now.
Okay. All right, great. So I'm gonna, as I mentioned, I'm gonna go over the sort of try to go over pretty high level on stuff. So I'll be going a little fast, but feel free to stop me and ask any questions. And then obviously you can go back and look at the reports or go into the wiki. Um, and so to start out, I'm going to start out with the puzzle report here and jump into, because I actually think most all the features that we're referencing in each of the genres is really applicable to kind of all genres, and we're seeing some major trends which I'll call out. So let's jump into the puzzle report, and the first one is the single elimination competition events. And the first the first thing to just comment on is we're definitely seeing revenue driving competition events across genres. So this is obviously in puzzle and Angry Birds 2, but we've also seen success in casino, pop slots, which is right here in the report if you want to go back. Revenue was up 27% week over week after the first time Win Zone went live, and that was actually a event that we analyzed in the casino report. In RPG, Empires and Puzzles, revenue is way up in the release of Knights of Avalon. And then we also saw other examples in RPG as well. So this is definitely a trending mechanic. And anecdotally, I was just looking at trends for the casino report, and competition events are way up this year relative to last year. So just in general, competition events are trending across top grossing apps in multiple genres. In this feature, players compete for high scores in a 16-player single elimination tournament. So this is pretty competitive, particularly in puzzle. It's in each tournament level can be attempted once every 3 hours for 24 hours, with additional attempts available for purchase. So players are going head to head, but then it's single elimination, and there's sort of an engagement mechanic tied into it where the player ever can try once every 3 hours, so they can come back after 3 hours, and that lasts for 24 hours. And then there were additional attempts available to purchase. I do want to call out one specific thing about this feature is that there were actually changes after the initial release, 3 days after the initial release, actually. The time limit, and this is right down here, guys, the time limit for each round was extended from 12 hours to 24 hours, and then the option to purchase additional cards during an attempt was removed. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. But that's a pretty interesting thing to happen in the market where an event had changes made to it within 3 days. So kudos to the Angry Birds 2 team for being so responsive to feedback and insights on this. But does anyone have any questions about the feature? Again, I'm kind of like going to stay high level and not go too into the details. So I think you guys can understand the feature at a high level, which is it's a 16-person single elimination tournament. You guys got that down? I'll take silence as a super awesome yes.
Yes.
All right,
Oh,
great.
but that's me. So
That's a person who analyzes the feature. Okay, well, great. I'm glad you get it, Karina. Like, Karina and I have a meeting next, and we're so, I guess we'll just continue it to talk. But excuse me, a sip of tea there. So a couple of big key insights from this. The first is the impact of purchasable boosts on competitive play. So this is really, really important to drive engagement in the competition event, but also drive revenue. And if you think about top grossing apps that are purely competitive and I'm a big Clash Royale player, for example, it's not 100% fair competition, right? Like if you're not a Clash player, you can purchase cards to and then upgrade their level. And then if you're fighting somebody and you have stronger cards, I mean, that that's a huge advantage. And so you might be fighting somebody who has a huge advantage that they ended up earning through either play or purchase. But it's really important to kind of make it feel like it is fair while also still making it so that you can purchase to upgrade. And in this feature, clearly they may have had some backlash, and we actually saw backlash in the community page when we looked at it, and that's probably why they made this change here. I'm going back to the previous slide to the option to purchase additional cards during a temp was removed. So the feedback that we saw in the forums was that players were pretty annoyed that you could basically buy a win, and so they removed this 3 days after the event was released. And then the second point is on that change is gather early feedback and make product improvements quickly. Again, kudos to Rovio for adjusting it 3 days after the event went live. And one way to gather feedback on a feature quickly is to add a link to an online questionnaire. And obviously the best feedback is the data feedback, but a lot of times that takes too long to gather to be able to respond. And this is a technique I actually used when I was back in the day when I was a PM at Zynga on a feature. We got really quick feedback using a link, and it's not the most accurate information, but it can give you insight into some things that are really annoying players. And again, I think this is what Rovio did was they responded really quickly, which is awesome. I'm going to skip these two recommendations. We're going to talk about a little bit about those later, but the last thing is for the competition events, consider adding a multiplier or jackpot bonus at the end of each stage to kind of to increase completion of the event. And PopSlots did this really well in Win Zone. Here you can see this image over here. They have the round 1, which was 3 minutes long, round 2, which is 3 minutes long. And to make sure players kind of like completed all, round 3 was this quick, I think it was 5 spins of this slot machine that determined a multiplier that would be multiplied to your score. So there was like this element of luck at the end that could really change the tide of the competition. Now, this makes it not really based on skill, right? And slots isn't based on skill, so it doesn't really matter that much. But if you're worried about that, you may just do a jackpot bonus that's for an actual currency for the non-tournament currency, not actual, but non-tournament currency. And that's up to, your player types and what you want to achieve. But that's a really great technique to increase engagement for the tournament event, or engagement and completion. All right, that was the first one. How long did that take me? 10 minutes-ish. Any questions on that before I move on, guys? It's kind of the style I'm going to go with. I'm going to go a little faster through the beginning and then talk a little bit more about the key insights. Okay, again, silence is just like resounding agreement, which I'll assume. Just like, oh, okay, let's see. We have a comment here. We don't see it. That was late. Okay. Event currencies with IAP bundles. Puzzle people on the call right now. I mean, if you're not familiar with this, write up this revenue driver. I would go back and take another look at it. Like this is definitely a trending revenue driver we're seeing in the space. In this example, we're going to talk about matching and mansion. We saw it was a little bit flat the first time, but it was up 9% the second time. And I know that you're like, well, okay. But if you go into the next slide, we brought all of the custom design events with event specific currency sales here and showed you what kind of impact they're having. Substantial week over week impact, substantial 2 week over 2 week impact on revenue for Fishdom and Homescapes, and now Matching and Mansion. And then here again, guys, if you want to check anything out, you can click here and jump into the feature database and check out what these were. And then another thing to note on this slide is we just mentioned, because we'll talk about it in the expert insights, that some of these have IAP bundles that include the event currency. Some have free bundles, includes event currency, and some don't. So there's like a couple different variations, and we'll compare that in the insight slide. I'm not going to go into too deep into this feature because, again, if you're in Puzzle, you're probably familiar with this, but players complete levels or buy IAP bundles to collect event-specific currency. If you're not in Puzzle, I mean, event-specific currency is just trending across genre. This is another big one. We saw it in RPG. We'll talk about that a little later. It's something that's popping up in Casino and has been for months. So this is definitely something that should be on your radar, is event-specific currency, meaning that they're releasing a currency that's specific to the event, right? So they have the core primaries and maybe secondary currencies, but now they're saying, okay, this currency is just for this event. This currency is then, in this example, this currency is then used to purchase event exclusive furniture, and this is, custom. That's where the custom design comes in. So jumping into the big takeaways, one thing we found was that making players unlock decorations in linear progression produce a larger revenue impact. Here you can see in image 1, it's a little bit small, but basically players are progressing along this linear meter here, and the cost, it's kind of small, it gets more, it gets higher on each item. So it goes from 5 all the way up to 45. And then the items that they get are obviously better and more desirable. And we saw in analyzing the IAP events that these had a greater revenue, and so did IAP sales, or events with IAP sales. So events that included the event-specific currency in a bundle also drove a larger revenue. So if you do these type of events, we highly recommend doing a linear progression and releasing sales that include the event-specific currency. If you do a dialogue, because that's generally what is released in these events. Let's see if I can give a good example of it. Oh, right here, image 3, where you have a $2.99 and a $9.99, and it's in this dialogue, and that's where you can see the event-specific currencies included. Check out this test. You may be familiar with it. I think this is a learnings that is highly applicable to dialogues, but the big takeaway is that you want to either the most impactful is that the highest revenue per player is if you do 3 options, where the first and second options, the second and third options are pretty clearly higher in value, and players are most likely to then grab onto that middle one. Kind of makes the decision a little easier. A 2-package option is actually pretty effective as well. But the best option is this third option here. I don't know, increase overall changes. We guess we didn't include the actual increases. I think we did in another report, which we'll talk about actually later. So I'll reference that in the next report. And then the last part is excessive currency. So after the event, the players are going to have this currency. Here we recommend that you do something fun like a wheel. This was something that Slotomania added to one of their more successful features, Slotto cards. After players had duplicate cards, so they would get this wheel of stars. So they would spin this wheel and get value. An alternative, which we are seeing in the market, in the general market, is another alternative would be to keep players' currency carry over to the next time you release that event. And this is something we're seeing pop up in Casino, and we're also seeing it pop up in other genres as well, is the idea that progress is being saved from one event to the re-release of that event. If that makes sense. So if you release an event today, let's say Williams Festival of Lights, and you release it for 3 days, after the 3 days, you save that player's progress, and then when you turn the event back on 2 weeks later, they are at that set progress, which I think is something that we're going to see a lot more of in the market, because it makes a lot of sense. All right, that was the casino report analysis. Any questions there? Nothing. Talia's on the phone. She usually talks. We don't have Joseph to laugh at my jokes, I don't think, today. So
I'm here, but casino's not really my area.
I know, but there's good stuff for you. You know, well, that was puzzle. That was puzzle. Okay, so now we're gonna actually jump into casino. What we're seeing, I think these are applicable. I mean, scratcher cards have been successful in casino. I don't see why they wouldn't be successful in puzzle or RPG. But so I'm gonna jump through this pretty quickly. We saw pretty nice revenue bumps on when this event was released 2 different times. In this event, players collect diamonds, again, an event currency. So that's like a big takeaway from this call is event-specific currency. They earn it from bingo sales and IAP bundles. So again, players can purchase it as well in a bundle. And then diamonds are used to buy scratcher cards that advance players on a prize map. You know, if you're not in casino, Playtika does a really nice job of layering progressions on top of progressions on top of other progressions. And here's kind of an example of it. I think they do an excellent job. It's kind of one of their core mechanics. And you can see that, you know, players are going to earn these diamonds and then use those to buy cards. And then that will advance players along a map. And then they will get rewards along this map. So, okay, a couple of big comments. I'm not going to go over the first one because that's kind of what we just talked about. Okay, here's this similar bullet from the puzzle report, which we're seeing, and you can see the difference here. Now we actually included the dollar per customer value on all these options. And test 3 generated 8% more revenue than test 1 and 32% more revenue than test 2. So if you're going to do a dialogue package, I highly recommend checking out these this research on these price points, because offering 3 packages, and you can see they did a really nice job of this here in this event. They have a $4 package, a $9 package, and a $10 package. And so you can see there's kind of a jump from the first to the second, because they know that most players are going to buy that second package, and then a certain amount is going to buy that third and first one. The other interesting, we're bringing in a lot more research from academic research and academic, but like scientific research that we're finding online. And one of the things we found were that customers perceive digital storefronts with images as having greater variety and accuracy than those with only text. You know, most buy pages have some images, but some do it better than others. And I think this was a really great example of it, because you can see here you have the chests. You have the most popular here. You have like the bags. You have the bags of gems, the chests, and then these like sort of equivalent of gems and chests. So they do a really nice job of using images in the buy page here, and they're showing a lot of information. Frame larger sales is save X%. This was also from research that customers prefer discounts to bonuses and percentages to dollar. So that's something that you want to consider. And then the last thing is we're definitely kind of seeing this. I mean, across genres is a little bit more of an increase of these like invite friends. And in this example, they had the invite friends dialogue actually had the event specific currency, which is kind of interesting, because if you send an invite to a friend, they may not join for a couple of days, the event might be over. But it's interesting that they're investing in this. And we actually, according to a 2019 report from ComScore, 30% of app users said they base download decisions on recommendations from friends and family. And then we're seeing this in the market too. Legendary Game of Heroes, WSOP, Wizard of Oz, and Zynga Poker all have used this referral feature in their app. So definitely something that we're seeing. All right, I'm not gonna any questions. Well, I am. Okay, any questions about that one, guys? Actually hoping to not talk for an hour, which would be amazing, because I'm always surprised at how much I can talk about this stuff. But
we could skip to RPG and then go back to whatever.
Okay. All right. Well, we're almost there. So Bingo Bash's revenue is up. For this feature, this was a an interesting like maze mechanic that we've talked about in RPG and other genres as well in the last couple months. Is this idea of having like a mini game within the game and having choices in that mini game. And here you can see in image 3, like players, what they do is they're going to progress along this maze, and then they're going to earn these tools to continue to get to these bells, and they can choose to go in either direction. So there's sort of like choices and items, and there's actually even levels in this as well. So there's a lot going on in this bingo mechanic. A couple big key takeaways. I mean, so reward systems. Goblins Candies did a really nice job of this and increased revenue by 41% 2 weeks over 2 weeks. This event also does as well. Is reward based on luck, skill, and effort, which is really a framework that people just kind of understand really well, because it's very similar to life, right? Like you get rewarded often for your skill, you get rewarded for your effort, and then you kind of just get lucky. So when you're building out the reward system, like make sure you reward for all 3 of those and make it kind of obvious that they're getting rewarded for those different things. And then, I mean, having luck in games sometimes softens the demands of pure skill. And I think this is important in games because players, are turning to games to feel rewarded and potentially escape what's going on in life for whatever reason. And having that luck element makes it just like more fun, game based, and less harsh as life can sometimes be. But and then we have an example from League of Legends, and we have the references all here in the report, which I really love. And then this is a one for like the PMs, game designers listening. Like I feel like PMs, game designers in gaming are hyper competitive, right? Like and we get into and that's something that we often, and I think, look at extrinsic values being super important, but it's kind of a reminder, like, just don't forget the intrinsic rewards. Research found that even limited character customization heightens players' enjoyment and intrinsic motivation, increasing engagement and playtime. And here's the reference here. And I think often I failed at this, I'm sure, and I see this in some of the features. It's like, okay, we're just gonna give them coins, we're gonna give coins, or currency or whatever. And don't forget that intrinsic rewards, right? It's also obviously a lot later on the economy. This is a trend in the market I was just mentioning, retaining player progress across recurring events. That was what I was talking about. So if you're interested in that, check out Eurobytes. We wrote about it. It boosted revenue 23% week over week. And I think a study found that loyalty programs increase purchase frequency, transaction size, and loyalty among light and moderate spenders. So a loyalty program across events could have a similar impact, and something to consider. And then last thing is show drop rates on items. I'm pretty confident all of you are aware of all the sort of legal stuff that's going on in the EU, the US, the UK, Australia, around loot boxes and things like that. Liquid and Grit is we like to think of ourselves as somewhat of a steward of long-term health of players and mobile games. So, obviously we want to do our best to create great games and make more engaging games and all that. But, just make sure you're thinking about the long-term health of the gaming ecosystem and do the right thing. And one of the things is like show the drop rates for potential items that have like a drop rate mechanic. All right. Jumping into the RPG report, Talia, just for you. So now I'm going to hear you like every second that I talk. Okay. I'm just kidding. The first one is pretty cool. If you're not an RPG, don't just sign off. This is a pretty interesting X promo event, which I feel like, coming from, again, back in the day at Zynga, I mean, it was super easy to X promo on web. right? You would just like fire up a dialogue and tell people to go download the other game, and Facebook would just let you like click it and go. Mobile is obviously a lot more difficult because they gotta click it, they gotta go to the app store, download the app, and there's just a lot more steps. This mechanic did a nice job of cross promoting from one app to another, and then they also did a revenue driving feature. So it's kind of a dual analysis here, but it's the same apps. So a little confusing, but I'm going to go over it. I'm going to go over a little slower, I guess. So Rise of Kingdom revenue was up 34% after the cooking collection event. So that's a big trend in mobile gaming across genres. Cooking events, they're just working across. And then here we have it in casino. They were in Cash Frenzy, which had revenue up 16% after Cooking Frenzy. Matching Mansion saw revenue up 12% after the 3 releases of Branded Juice Bar. And now we're seeing cooking events in RPG of all things. Like I wouldn't have guessed it, but you know what? Don't rely just on your instincts. I mean, on your intuition and instincts when you're making strong game design decisions, because man, so often we're proven that players want something that we might not have thought of being an obvious revenue driver, and cooking events, they're working cross genre. So I'm just going to go quickly over this. There's a really great video of this, but during the Thanksgiving Fest event in Rise of Kingdoms, players collect ingredients to complete dishes for individual and alliance rewards, which is pretty cool. There's also kind of an interesting thing here. Yeah.
For a quick question, did you notice any difference between this and how they are building their standard alliance collect items to combine together events?
I think we were going to include that in the analysis. We don't have our RPG analyst on the call. Corinne, do you remember the stuff that Sam said? I think in the details here, I can't remember the exact. Do you remember?
think I remember that he said that it was pretty different than just the usual, collect resource item, because RPG most often has a collection with an event currency and collection. And he felt that it was really different because of the cooking aspect. And then, like Brett's pointing out, that there was like this incentive of like the peer pressure of everyone completing it within a certain time frame. So it was vastly different than what he's seen out there.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I don't know, alliances that accumulate. Yeah, there's this like 12-hour feast element to it too. And yeah, I'll follow up on that, Talia. Good question.
Okay, if you look back, especially with Rise of Kingdoms, the style of event, they for their spring event last year, if you take the pictures off of it, there's a lot of similarities in how they are building the events as a whole.
Yeah, we talked about that. I think we included this too just because of the cooking element of it, which is interesting because again, we're seeing just this cooking work across genres. But let me follow up to see if there's any other differences in this. I apologize for not knowing that off the top of my head. So the other interesting thing was this cross promo. So AFK Arena's downloads were up 26%, well, 65% 2 weeks over 2 weeks due to the rise of Arena's cross promotion event with Rise of Kingdoms, an app that has nearly 3 times as many downloads as AFK Arena. So both of these apps are from the same company, and there was a cross promotion event, and you can see the downloads are increasing after this event in AFK Arena. And in the Rise of Arena's cross-promotion event, challenges in Rise of Kingdoms and AFK Arena award event exclusive avatars for both games. So it was a pretty simple event for players to complete, and they go complete it in either app, and then completing the challenge unlocked these 2 avatars. and then each frame must have been claimed within the respective game, and then the same, both games award the same 2 frames. So a kind of interesting mechanic here, and it seems to have driven some substantial downloads from one app to the other. A couple big insights for the group mechanics. If you do a group mechanic, one thing is you do want to identify individual contributors during the cooperative events. Researchers found that social loafing is a tendency for individuals to decrease cooperation efforts as group sizes increases. Kind of makes sense. If you're one of a million people, like, you're not going to potentially try as hard as if you're one of 5. So you want to identify individual contributors, because in one study they found that this increased output by 46% compared to groups with anonymous contributors. So you want to like call people out, obviously, and sort of, well, not obviously, but you want to call people out and identify them, and then consider giving them even additional rewards if they're contributing to the group. And I think, Slotomania, Slotoclans did a really nice job of this, and this was a big revenue driver for Slotomania, where players would unlock the group event, but then they could upgrade their individual winnings, and that's image here. I think one of the things that this event did nicely was it let players earn their way to another app, and this is something that triggers a psychological effect that players are like they've earned this thing, and now they have sort of a tension that they want to kind of like complete it. They want to go get that item, as opposed to just like sending someone over with coins to another app, which is kind of what we used to do at Zynga. But this makes it feel like, oh, okay, I earned this thing, I should go get it. The other sort of like thing that we're seeing across genres is this custom URL redemption codes. I just talked about that in the last report, where they were doing a referral bonus, but in this feature, it was actually a redemption code they used. And we also have seen custom URLs being used for sharing your club, for getting people to referral codes and things like that. And then, I think the last is make avatar frames publicly visible and socially powerful. In this example, they are publicly visible, but they don't really have a social power to them. And we saw in a event in casino, in Big Fish Casino, that an avatar that was one publicly shown was great, but this also added this power where when they joined a room, everyone else in the room would get coins. So it made the player who had the avatar be, I wouldn't say more powerful, but more generous and more sort of like giving to the other people, and more important in many ways, because they were like giving value to other players when they entered a room. And then we have some good research references for all of our recommendations here, which is something we've added to the reports. I don't know, afterwards, if you guys have any thoughts on these research references, I'd love to hear them, because it's something we've added to the reports. And then, the last thing I'll go over is the Mirror Mirror and Star Trek Fleet Commander. I think, again, this was an interesting one, because again, it goes back to this event currency. The event currency here, though, is an actual engagement event. So it's like so I'll just read this quickly, but during this multi-event, players spend 2 types of event tokens to unlock missions, and then high-level players construct a new ship to gain access to event-exclusive competitions. So there's a couple of really cool things going on here. Again, first is that this event currency was one of them was actually an engagement token, right? So they could only engage in the event using this currency. That really pushed revenue for this event, because once they ran out of their free currency, they had to purchase it. And then the other thing is that they use levels to unlock certain things in the event. So the players had to be at level 36 to collect these blueprints of this. I think we should probably say ship, but I think it's a ship. It's ISS jellyfish ship, And then players at level 39 could build the ship and could unlock actually competitions, which is a really nice layer design on top of things, where when you have like sort of hardcore higher level players, they can do something that others can't, and then once they do, they are actually going to unlock competitions, and I'll comment on that here. First, as I mentioned, event specific currencies are just trending. This was a little bit different, but it's something that you should think about in terms of when you're designing events in your tool chest of things to drive engagement or revenue. A currency is something that we're just seeing a lot of impact across genre. Again, unlock exclusive competitions with high level PvE challenges. So you never want to limit the amount of engagement or spend a player can do at any given time. And in this event, what they did to make sure that happens is once the player unlocks all the challenges or finish all the challenges, they unlock this competition. And obviously, competitions are an infinite amount of engagement if they're competing with other players. So consider adding that end of event, end of level type mechanic. And then just referencing a survey of 3,200 MMORPG players found that players who prioritize leveling up, obtaining rare items, and optimizing game also have strong preference for competition mechanics. So it's not exclusive. Like, players aren't either competition or challenge completers. They have a high desire to do both. And then consider making, if you do an event with an event currency, give out some free tokens. We've seen this also in other examples across different genres. And then the research we referenced was, sampling, which you've probably seen in supermarkets and other places like that. And then lastly, but avoid using the same price for multiple purchase options. One study found that only 46% of customers completed a purchase when offered two types of gum at the same price. So make sure that you have a big difference. And we actually are analyzing a feature in Casino that did just include two of the same price points. So just make sure that you use price as a way for players to make a decision between different packages. So, do a lot of pricing testing, research pricing, check out the best practices on the feature database, or ping us. And because that's an important element for players to make like sort of a quick decision. All right, let's see. That is the three reports that I was going to go over. The big takeaways again are the fact that competition events are trending across genres. We saw that in the puzzle report. We've seen that in Casino, and we've seen that in RPG. The second is IAP bundles. If you're in puzzle or elsewhere, in puzzle, the custom design events with IAP bundles is trending and showing strong revenue impact for several top grossing apps. And make sure that you include IAP sales in the event currency in the IAP sales and linear progressions. If you're doing a by-page dialogue, ping us or reference the reports. We're finding a ton of really valuable information on buy pages, price points, and things like that. You want to be framing things as save X%. You want to be doing 3 different price points, with the middle being the higher distinctive price point, because that's going to be the most of the transactions. Don't forget intrinsic rewards, and consider some type of carryover of progress from one event to the next if you have like a sort of a really popular event. And then the last couple is just like cooking mechanics are certainly trending cross genre, and that's another important thing to. And then don't limit engagement so just allow players to continuously engage. And I think actually we were doing an analysis on a top grossing app, and deep analysis, and we were trying to get to the top level of it, and we found that basically they have like a looping level in their events. So they never have like an end level, so it just like continually goes. Like, it's almost impossible to find the end level in this event system. So that's another thing, another way to use it. All right, guys. 10:43, so it's just shorter, which I like because I don't think people can last for an hour, but maybe that's just me. Any questions or comments? You can obviously follow up with us afterwards, but anything I can answer right now, guys? Okay, I'll again consider the silence just like resounding, like just it's perfect, Brett. Everything you've shared. For subscribers, just a heads up, we do have Slack shared channels that we're starting with all of our subscribers. So if you don't have that set up and you want to be able to ping us directly with questions or support, send me a DM in LinkedIn or email me and we'll set that up. And we are also doing a ton of new stuff in the feature database. There's now a notification tool in there that you can get emails of your most important apps you want to follow and be able to click right into the library. So that's a new functionality that was just released in the feature database. All right, guys, that's it from us. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you guys join us next month.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.